are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we'll be revisiting my experiences again. And as always, you can find links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show, along with links to friends of the show at the website, which is salsidoparanormal.com, and that's SALSIDO, paranormal.com. And I'm doing that now, in case anyone hasn't heard. I'm doing a shorter intro now just because I realized that was quite the long intro before, and everything can be found on the website, like I just said. So I figure leave more time in the show for more content, basically. And yeah, so this is another episode in this series. It's been a lot of fun so far to do these shows, and I figure tonight I'll be covering that training center I went to for people with low vision or no vision. So, but to do that, we will be talking here in a moment with, actually, you can do that right now. Jen, welcome to the show again.
Hey, yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to hearing about the experiences at this center. I've heard kind of a, brief of it several times, and so I'd like to hear more of the details and kind of just really ferret out all the things that, even things you may have noticed at the time. So, but we'll think about hopefully this time when really looking at it at such a close angle, and really examining the situation. So I'm looking forward to it. And as always, I'm happy to be here. And looking forward to hearing your experiences about it.
Yeah, always glad to have you here. And so I'll get started on this. And because it happened, I went there the first time when I was about 18, I think around 18 years old. So I ended up in my school career, whatever you want to call it, my school years, I ended up getting held back 1 year, and then I stayed on one extra year for school for various sort of vocational training and things. But so when I went to this training center, it was I believe it was around 2000, around there, but middle of the summer, between school years, basically. And so this place it's the whole purpose of it is to provide training and learning environments for independent living skills, how to cook, how to clean, how to manage money, how to get around, to people that have lost vision or were not born with complete vision or no vision at all. And I did learn a lot there. Both times I went there. I went there at that time, like I said, when I was about 18, I believe. Time is weird. I'm terrible at remembering exact times. But then I went there again about 14 years ago, 15 years ago now, something like that. So, and again, I learned a lot there. But also, when I first got there the first time, the first night, I was already starting to be a night owl at that point, even though I was still in school. And but the one thing about this training center is you basically live there for as long as you're there. So you have classes and everything, and you eat in the cafeteria, and then you have your own room. And so the first night I was there, I was really excited and everything, and I knew they had a computer room, and just basically what to me at the time seemed like state-of-the-art, brand new, huge computer monitors, huge screens and everything, and they had the internet and everything. So first night, once I realized that I could get in there, I decided I wanted to, and they let me in. They keep the doors to the rooms locked unless you ask to use a room, at least at the time anyway. That may have changed the second time I went back. Yeah, the second time I went back there, at that point, a lot of people had mobile devices at that point because it was further into the 2000 teens there. But so by the first night I was there, I had activity, and I was sitting in the computer room just browsing the web online, just playing computer online card games, board games, stuff like that. Because this this is back closer to around 2000, so the online gaming options were not huge as of yet. But I was in the room alone because, of course, I was a night owl and no one else was apparently at the time. And I kept on hearing footsteps in this small, sort of L-shaped room right behind me in the middle of the room, and just walking back and forth, just regular pace. But of course, the room was empty, and the door, uh, it was one of those where you could open it, but it would close automatically on its own. So I knew I was alone in there. And the other amazing thing about the footsteps was that I they were basically walking in the same space as a couple of the chairs that they were all on rollers and everything and their wheels and everything. And it was basically walking literally through chairs in the middle of the room. And at that point, this was a handful of years after my initial experiences at my cousin's house. Excuse me, cousin's house and my grandparents' house and everything. My voice is still apparently recovering, so I apologize for little drops here and there. But and it was just really amazing because it wasn't scary. It was definite audible footsteps. And I noticed if I walk around the building in the evening or at night or in the early morning, uh, if there was no one else around, I would hear footsteps walking around with me or behind me or off in the distance, and there'd be no one there. And I found out afterwards that people had that same experience there. So that was amazing. So not long after that, it really, at first it was all just footsteps. But at one point in that same summer, that same first time I was there, um, they had me transferred to another room in the complex that was set up like a full apartment. Because when you get there, you're just in sort of dorm rooms that just have one room uh, where your bed and everything is at, and then a bathroom. And but they had these two apartments set up in there as well to sort of simulate what it's like to live in an apartment with a living room and kitchen and all those kinds of things where you make your own food. And there was one of those in the same section as the other dorm rooms, but there was another one that was across the building in the side of it's basically like a square-shaped building in the side of the square that had a lot of the other classrooms. So basically at night you were there alone in that part of the building. And the first night I went to stay in there after I got all my stuff in there. Um, I laid down to go to sleep, and the room felt weird, and I couldn't explain why, and I didn't want to turn off the lights all the way, which is unusual for me even back then. Before my eyes started to get sensitive to light, I've always liked to sleep in the dark. And so I had the lights turned down as much as I could. They had dimmer dials on the for the lights instead of switches. And I laid down and I heard this woman's voice talking, but I couldn't make out what she was saying as I was falling asleep. And so I'd wake up and then it would stop. And this happened a couple of times in a row. And I finally decided that I was not going to sleep at the time after all. I was kind of freaked out. And I went and hung out in the TV rooms and until I got tired enough to go back to the room and just fall asleep. And I thought that was odd. Also, whenever I'd be in there in the middle of the day, in the kitchen part of the apartment, I'd always hear knocks or bumps and bangs on the walls and the ceiling of the room, but inside the room. Like someone was just almost like flying around and moving around and just knocking on things constantly. So that was also odd. One of the first days in that apartment too, I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one, but it was the first one. I remember now because actually I had just sat down because everything was in the room finally, and they had a couch. It was more like a waiting room couch, not like a regular house or couch you find in the house, because it had a metal frame and everything on it. And I tapped my fingernail on the frame just real quick for a couple times as I was thinking about stuff, and I heard this tap on the mirror in the bathroom, which you could not see from the living room. Basically, it was you walk into the apartment from the hallway, and there's a doorway to your right that goes into the kitchen, and then you have to make another right to go into the bathroom. And I thought that was odd, but who knows? Could have just been air movement, possibly, maybe, or something. I don't know. Didn't really. I was trying to figure out what it was, but also I was wondering if it was anything weird because it was just odd what would be tapping on the mirror in the bathroom. And so I tapped again in a different pattern, different rhythm, and waited and got the same pattern, that same pattern from that second time back again. And tried it a third time. Happened a third time. I also remember I left that room and came back a couple times at night. That was the first time. And then trying to fall asleep was the second time when I heard that woman's voice. So that was a weird room. And not long after all these things were happening, I asked the management, can I get transferred to the other apartment? And eventually they were able to do that, and I was very glad. Come to find out, though, I was telling friends about this that were there at the time as well, and they said, well, that's funny. The last guy that was in that apartment that you just transferred out of, he did the same thing. He asked to be taken out of there, too. And I said, oh, that's weird. I wonder why. And so I decided I wanted to go and talk to the guy. And we did. This friend that knew him a little better than I did. And I went to talk with him. And I started telling him, saying, like, there's some weird things that happened to me in that room. You ever have anything weird happen to you? And all he would say is, yeah. And I described things happening, and he just did not want to talk about it. And so, and I could just tell he had experiences there, but he did not want to go there. And I mean, could be the stigma against all that, against believing in any kind of paranormal activity. Could have just been he was so freaked out. Could have been both. But he would not say what happened to him in that room. And thought that was really weird. So I'm trying to think of anything else that happened there that first time. There was one other thing that happened there in that apartment, actually. I was talking with a friend one day on the phone that had gone home from that center. They had been there, and then they left and went home. And we were on the phone, and a voice cut in on the landline phone, and it said something like, I'm coming down the hallway now, but it was in a tone of like they were just reporting what they were doing to their coworkers or superiors or whatever. And I just stopped. My friend stopped. And they actually asked me first, did you hear that? And I said, yeah, I heard that. And that's the same voice I heard in here the first night I was here. So that was really odd to have a voice that I heard in person in the same room with me, and then another day heard it over the phone. And yeah, I think that's basically everything that happened the first time I was there. So maybe this is a good point now to stop. And Jen, happy to hear your thoughts on all this.
So, how long were you there at the facility at that point?
It was, I believe it was at least half a month. It was like a couple weeks at least that I was there the first time. And then another month the second time down there.
But it was the first time when you started noticing these things, pretty much like right off the bat, or?
Yeah, yep. Yeah.
And then you don't have to disclose exactly where, but like, was this a similar region in the United States, like the Midwest, northern?
Yeah, I forgot to say that. No, it was in Michigan. It was in a big town called Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah.
It's a government facility, so I don't want to name it, but
Right. Yeah.
but yeah. So yep, so it's on the west coast of Michigan.
Okay. And then how many people were there attending?
I believe it was about, like, I'd say maybe 10 to 20 of us at any given time.
So
Total
kind
as
of a
far as
small,
yeah.
kind of a small thing.
Yep.
That's really neat. And then the footsteps, you know, it's so strange. I mean, I've heard these footsteps, and a lot of people report these things. I've only heard the footsteps like a few times, and the one that stands out in particular was at a house I used to live in, and I heard footsteps up in the attic. And, for the longest time, I thought it was some sort of, and then some sort of paranormal activity. I immediately
Right.
thought that because I couldn't imagine anything else, because it wasn't a easy attic,
Right.
but like you couldn't just get up in there. But later on, I always wondered, if somebody had gotten their way up in there or something. But highly unlikely. But and also the pattern of the footsteps, the pacing, and that sort of thing, which reminds me of what you're describing there, where it seems like they're kind of just walking around in there.
Yeah.
But I wondered too what the facility had been prior, if that matters at all, because it's interesting if the past of the facility was unremarkable, you know, or if it had a history, and I think both are equally interesting. So if it was built intentionally for this purpose, that's interesting. But also too, if it has any kind of history, of course that's helpful, you know.
Right. And I don't know I don't know the past of it. I haven't been able to do a lot of research on it. I do know that right across the street from it is uh, um, a mental health facility, basically
Oh,
so I don't know if it was originally part of that or not.
yeah,
I'm not
that's
sure, but it would make sense in a way given all the activity if it had been to me.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah, yep. So
That's really cool. And then the other thing, like you said you could tell that the tapping was coming from the direction of the bathroom,
yes.
and you know that's neat too. And it almost reminds me of the way that the tapping was going back and forth, the
Mhm.
way that like certain creatures will even communicate through calls, like sort of a like owls. Like there's like if you respond back with animal calls back to an animal, they will respond back many times,
Right.
which is really neat. But it's almost reminds me of some kind of like a call, sort of, or some kind of definitely a communication. And then it going back and forth, an intelligent communication of sorts was something. And then the phone call, I mean, just a blatant EVP coming across, giving direction of where they're coming from. But I mean, a lot of energy, it sounds like, was active, fairly active. And even so, that another individual noticed that the apartment you were staying in was so active, just like yourself, that they repeated the same thing and also left or wanted to move to another apartment,
Yeah.
completely understandably. But,
And I'm just thinking about this now, and it makes sense in a way too that, I mean, it was exciting to go there, but it was also it was unusual because you're not living with your family anymore, or you're not living in your own place anymore while you're there. You're living there, and there's all kinds of people there, and you're gonna get along well with some, and maybe not the best with others, and just all kinds of emotions. There's always I mean, I don't want to get into, it's not important, but there's always drama. Some people just like drama, and so there was that going on there. So I guess, I mean, really, if I think about it, there was, there's a lot of emotions that were always going through that place. And who knows, I mean, I
yeah,
don't even know how many years the place was running as just that training center, but it's like it's almost like a hotel setting in a way.
yeah. But also a very tight group,
Right.
fairly small group of people. It wasn't like, which wouldn't make, I don't know what difference that would make, but just interesting. There's kind of more of almost, a more intimate environment by having a select group of individuals, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and so I'm just thinking about that now, the emotions and all the energy from that. So even if it wasn't anything before it became that training center, even if it was just that for its whole history, there's still enough energy that could happen there that could have been put out there
Yeah.
that would be causing stuff to happen. So, but
Yeah, on the one hand, you have
yeah,
like yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I'll go on to my second visit here after, but happy to hear whatever other thoughts you have on this so far.
Oh, just that, on the one hand, if the facility was built specifically for this purpose, you know, that adds an interesting thread that whatever kind of paranormal activity might be related to that. But if it was sort of an environmental situation where you have a history there with the facility or with the facility across the street, that could make sense too. It just adds a different, dimension to it as far as like what were the circumstance, trying to understand what the circumstances were.
Yeah. And there was a difference between the first time there and then the second time that I went there, in that the first time I told a couple of friends about the weird stuff that happened there, but no one really wanted to get into that or try to figure out what was going on or any of that. Like most of my friends there, they accepted it, but and then the one friend knew of the guy that had been in that apartment before me, but other than that, no one really wanted to think about that or talk about that much. But the second time I went there, this was in the middle of the whole paranormal reality show. I guess possibly the like once it had gotten really popular. The second time I went there was in the early 2010s, around there, and or maybe mid. So, but still, that's right in the middle of. By that point, all the major shows were around. Ghost Hunters, different like multiple versions of Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures were all common at that point by then. So, a lot more people that were sort of interested and willing to think about that and talk about that the second time I went there versus the first time. So, but speaking of that second time, I guess I can start there. Um, Years later, after that first time, so this was when I was about 30, 29, 30. It was actually after. So I guess I should go into just describe my weird possible alien abduction experience again, because this happened and I ended up going to this training center because of this event happening. And so one night, about 15 years ago, let's say roughly, I fell asleep out in here in my living room. At the time I was sleeping on a couch because it was a really comfortable couch. And I woke up, it felt like, on this flat, hard surface, and couldn't move except for my eyes, basically in my head, I guess a little bit possibly, but mostly just my eyes. Could not move, and I found that I was in a room with these dark blue walls and these white cabinets or shelves built into them that had some kind of electronics in them, and I couldn't really move. And there were these three gray blurs that were moving around this table bed that I was on, and but they were just blurs, and I couldn't see features on them at all. And I was trying to move, and I couldn't move. And I heard my parents' voices off to one side, basically saying everything's okay. But there was no emotion in their voices. And so I looked off to the one side, and I could see two more of these gray blurs where the voices came from. And so I knew it wasn't my parents. And all this time there was a light. The ceiling was just one massive light. And this thing came down. It was like a robotic arm extension kind of a thing. And it had a needle at the end of it. And the whole experience ended with this needle touching my left eye. And I freaked out, and everything went black. And I woke up back at home. And it took me years to find people that I could talk about that kind of stuff with. And when I did, they knew about my eyes getting worse, and they asked me when that happened, basically. And it turns out my eye strain and light sensitivity, all that started after I had this experience. And because I had this eye strain and light sensitivity, I decided at that time, about 15 years ago, that I needed to learn how to read Braille. So I reached back out to the state. I'm not sure if it's still around now or not because of funding and all this and that. But I reached back out to this particular department within my state of Michigan here to see about learning how to read Braille. And we went back and forth 3 times here and there through mail and phone calls and stuff. And excuse me, they invited me to go back to that training center. But they said you have to wait for a while, like some months, like several months, because the place is being renovated, which I wasn't thinking about at the time about the paranormal activity that had happened there the first time, but now it cracks me up because what happens so often with renovation in places? You get more activity. But so I said okay, and that's fine. And eventually they said okay, you can come out here, and so I did. And the very first night I was there, again, it's so funny because the first night each time I was there was activity. Um, I got there and put all my stuff in my room and everything, and uh, then I noticed as I was walking by the TV conference room, there was a bunch of people in there, and I went back in there to see what they were watching once I put everything away, and it was one of those. I think it was one of the versions of Ghost Hunters at that point, I believe. But and so I went back in there and sat down and started saying hi to everyone, and I started noticing as the show was playing that I was hearing bumps and bangs and seeing shadows moving around in the back half of from the back half of the room as we were all sitting there in the dark, listening and or watching, depending on everyone's level of vision, to this paranormal reality show. And someone noticed me looking back there because I kept on looking back into the other half of the room. And they said, "Oh, you're noticing that too, huh? Oh, we've been noticing that all night." I thought, "Oh, that's fascinating." So here I am back here again, and its activity is still there and possibly increased. So, and again, we had the same. I had the same thing happen there the second time, where there was footsteps and uh, sounded like you're being like kind of followed off in the distance down the hallways whenever you walked around at night. And at this point, this was well years after I got out of school, so I was even more of a night owl at that point because I had no schedule I had to keep to. Uh, so um, so yeah, a lot of times at night I'd be up working on my laptop or whatever. At that point, I had a laptop, and I'd uh, I'd hear footsteps in the rooms, or there was a couple times I'd be in the library, which is a small room, and there's a courtyard in the middle of the building because it's like shaped like a square kind of, and I would notice like a almost like a shadow figure, but just like a dark figure moving through this well lit courtyard, and I'd turn and look, and it'd be gone. And this happened a few times when I'd be up at night, late at night, like 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, and people would go out there to smoke cigarettes and stuff, and then go back in. But these figures always vanished whenever I'd turn and look. It's like someone was trying to get my attention, but not too much. Um, but anyway, so went back there. Funny thing about that, the place where that apartment had been, they had gotten rid of that apartment, and I wonder now, did they get rid of it because they had so many people? I mean, asking to be transferred out of there. Did they get rid of it because they were never able to keep people in there for long? I mean, there's no way to know. But that space had been turned into classrooms, just small classrooms. And I would, that's where that's where I went and learned Braille, was in one of these classrooms. And so, of course, there was no reason to ever be in those classrooms at night. But even in the daytime, the rooms felt fine. But what I noticed was right next to those spaces was the kitchen, the kitchen classroom. And I noticed that whenever I go and visit friends, if they were working on anything, making anything in that kitchen classroom at night, because you were allowed to do that if you had things you wanted to make, or yeah, they would put in the oven during the day and then take back out in the evening or whatever. Um, they would let you in, and I noticed whenever I go in there in the evening or at night, it always feel like there was more people in there than just the friend and I that I was visiting at night in that kitchen classroom. So I think whoever was in that apartment just moved over and was in the kitchen. And so anyway, at one point, a couple nights before I was going to go home, And this whole time, people were hearing bumps and bangs, like in their rooms, in their bedroom, like their dorm rooms, and at night sometimes. And people were telling me that they heard the same sounds in the hallways. And so this one night, not long before I ended up leaving there for good, a bunch of friends and I had been sitting in the conference room, conference TV room, and they ended up going to bed. And of course, me being night owl, I stayed up. And uh, as soon as they all left, I started hearing tapping on the windows in the back of the room. Now, the windows in the back of the room, they were these big, good-sized windows. And I would look, and there'd be nothing there, no one there. And, of course, the other thing about the second time I went there, the first time I went there, it was in the middle of summer. The second time, it was in the middle of winter, my most favorite season. No. And so there was snow, basically in drifts, out up against the sides of the building, covering these bushes that were there. So for anyone to be lightly tapping on the windows, you'd have to have a stick or a long arm. You have to be really tall to even get to these windows to tap on them. And then, of course, also to do that and then get out of sight in the middle of this open courtyard would not have been easy either, especially for someone that can't see so well and is not going to usually be running around quickly. So I was hearing that, and around the same time, I started hearing footsteps and then the sound of a cane, a white cane, in the hallway in front of me. And the wall, and basically the hallway was in front of me on the other side of the wall. And there were two doors to this TV conference room, and they both had windows. And whenever I'd hear the footsteps and the tapping out in the hallway, I'd look up because I'd think, oh, someone's still awake and they're coming over here. But the lights would always still be off, even when I was hearing the footsteps and the tapping, or the cane tapping. And so I thought that was odd. And this went on for like an hour or two, this one night. And eventually I heard a louder tap on the window, looked up and looked outside again, and it was one of my friends. And he was motioning for me to let him in through the door in the library, which was the room next to the TV conference room. And he came in and he said, "You're not going to believe what happened." And so I let him in and everything, and he said basically told all this to me. He said that he had gone back to his room to go to sleep and started hearing the tapping again in his room. And so because of all the TV shows we've been watching and all this, he decided to try to do basically an EVP session, electronic voice phenomenon, with his phone. And so he got the recorder going on his phone and said out loud, "Is there anyone here?" And then just, of course, went quiet to wait for any kind of possible response. And he let the recorder go for a while and then stopped it. And what he heard freaked him out. So he left his room, went outside to smoke, came back in, met a friend in the hallway, and tried to play the recording for this friend of ours, and it would not play for them. He could not get it to play again at the time. So then he went back outside, apparently to smoke some more, because he was even more freaked out. And then he came and knocked on the window to have me let him in. So he played this recording, and it played, of course, for me. And it was this woman's voice, and not only just a woman's voice, it was that same woman's voice from the first two times I had heard it there, over a decade earlier, saying, "Looking for the one named James." And I was amazed because, yes, I had heard all kinds of EVPs on TV shows and things like that, and so I it's not that I doubted that they existed, but it's completely different when you hear one in person, and not only that, it says your name. And his phone would not work right as long as he had that recording on that phone. And eventually he was able to delete the recording. And once he was able to do that, the phone worked fine. Uh, so that was a really, really amazing experience. And I don't know why that woman was looking for me. It's amazing that she possibly recognized me over a decade later. Uh, but yeah, so there are other people that had experiences there. I have one friend that was in that kitchen classroom one night, and they said they looked outside, just happened to look outside. It was at night, so they weren't going to see much, but they saw apparently the face of a little boy outside. Now this place is like the youngest you can be to go to this place is like a teenager. And this face was just, it was like I guess it was almost like a blue colored as well, like colored blue, and it was there and it was gone. And so it wasn't just me having experiences there, and it wasn't when I wasn't always present for everyone else's experiences. But anyway, so and I feel like I've gone back and visited that place in my sleep over the years here and there too, and to different versions of the place, the whole multiverse traveling out of body experience traveling that I've done here and there. I feel like I've gone there and seen different versions of the place, and I don't know what that means, but anyway, so yeah, I think that's everything.
Okay, so I do kind of wonder if the facility could be being utilized in different ways besides just the purpose it was said to be intended for. It could be an observational sort of situation going on with, in the case of these paranormal experiences, there could be, it seems like that could be something going on, that there was some type of an observer effect occurring, maybe with some other individuals from perhaps, another, some sort of, I don't know how it would work, but if you were to think about the interest, it could be the knowledge that could be gained from watching individuals who have different hypersensory than others, given the circumstances. Other senses
Right.
would, in some occasions, be enhanced. In fact, if you were to erase the use of all senses, the individual may work as some sort of a psychic conduit in a way. But just removing the impediment of taking in optically the environment around you, I would think that could be utilized to understand something about the way that the other senses operate. And I wonder if some other groups of some kind, now I can't identify what or imagine what, but it makes me wonder if there's sort of an observation occurring, or even another type of, that location by some other groups of, this is completely speculative, but, that there could be something like that going on. To tie it in, I mean, to look at the idea that there were these experiences occurring that had no decent explanation. Like there was no one actually producing the tapping noises. They were just appearing out of, thin air, but there was a lot of interaction with not just yourself, but with the other individuals that were there at the facility.
Yeah.
And that it's a sort of government-run facility as well, you mentioned. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
so it's not like it's a private, even if it was, I mean, I don't know if it would make a difference, but if there was some interest there parallel with, the intended use of the program, there could have been something like that going on, because I think that there is possibly an enhancement of other senses, in the absence of another. And so I think that stands out. And then that multiple individuals. And one thing I thought was really interesting, and you said that, the watching of these of the paranormal shows, and what I've always noticed, which is really, something about watching a horror film or watching a paranormal film, but it puts your mind in a different sort of maybe a different state of mind, that's conducive actually to even experiencing these things. It's not so much you just get kind of spooked, but it almost is this, it's like if the brain somehow begins to sort of correlate with a certain tempo or something, or a frequency that allows them to actually even experience some of the things that they're seeing, or it opens up the environment to it. To suggestible individuals who might be sensitive to those sort of things, there could have been something like that even at work. And not knowing the history of the facility doesn't matter, but the purpose of it at the time to help out, individuals who have, uh, are compromised with, with that in a way, and they're trying to work around that. But I think that it sounds like, something obviously taking a great deal of interest in that, especially in the paranormal realm, but never, as usual, never fully revealing the motivation of, or if there's some kind of testing going on in a way, it never being fully revealed what the intention would be.
Yeah.
But they may have been observing and gathering data themselves in reference to for some other purpose. And it's never delved into. It's hardly ever delved into about individuals who have these different sensory perceptions, as far as like, I like sight, but then of course the other senses might compensate. Or if you were to remove all of the senses, like I said earlier at the beginning, the individual you're left with is simply when they're trying to grasp an understanding of the world, what are they using to do that? Their entire environment like that. And so simply removing the eyesight, which is one of the main senses, would enhance not only the other senses, but maybe even an alternate sense that wouldn't typically be used. And that might be of a great deal of interest to some individuals or to certain groups. Those groups, unnamed, unknown, but just
Yeah.
speculating. And then by what means, if these are actually people, how would they appear to, if this was some kind of study in a way, how would they be able to appear invisibly? And then if you were to consider that it's some kind of alternate dimension, it almost seems more likely that it's something within this, dimension that has the ability somehow to be observing in this way, or I don't know. It goes into so many different avenues of what would help to explain it.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, sort of.
Yeah, and I have low vision. I have no sense of smell. I have limited senses of taste and touch. So hearing is the only one that I have that really works well, um, out of all the senses I have. So it doesn't surprise me in a way that, so much of my reality is, you could almost say, it's in my mind, in my thinking, and just, it's internal in a way because of that limited physical access to everything else. It is very much, I'm always in my own thoughts, and I hear things and I can see some things, but I really don't. I don't rely a lot on the seeing of the things because I know I'm not seeing them clearly. So uh, hearing is really the main thing. But yeah, I that place. And it's funny because it's like um, it's not right on the side of the street, like right up to the sidewalk on the street. It's a little ways back. So you wouldn't just have people wandering around, outside the building doing weird stuff. Like you'd have to walk a ways to get there to do that. Um, so, and again, it makes you wonder. What was the reason for that? But I would love to investigate that place, like have that place to myself and a few friends, and just stay there and basically do a paranormal investigation there and see what we pick up because there was just so much activity there. But
Yeah.
it was always at night, uh, or in the early morning. It was always when none of the staff was around. That was worked there, that did all the teaching and all the cooking and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It was amazing. I learned a lot there, and but yeah, a lot of experiences there, and I I I, I really, I don't know. I'm wondering what's going to happen to it because even between the first time and the second time I went there, they were getting they were losing funding for different things here and there, so it may not be that kind of a training center forever. And I'm just curious, what will happen there? Will there still be activity there if it does change to something else at some point?
Yeah, that would be very telling about what what the intention might have been behind the activity. And then when you
Right.
mentioned the EVPs too, where his device not working, your
Yep.
friend's device not working when they were. I've had that happen too. So, I mean, it was a long time ago, like about the same, as far as the perspective of the time frame, but
Right.
where recording EVP and then you play it back and it plays, and then it sort of has some kind of a effect on the device that's playing it, and then trying to play it for certain individuals, it being kind of finicky
Yeah.
and not just performing, so to speak, in a way where it's almost as if the recording itself has some sort of electronic charge or something that shorts out the device, which is just really strange because it would insinuate that the recording itself is carrying a sort of um, alternative power to it some way, or
Right.
it's carrying something that shorts out the device, the maybe the wattage or the who knows what. But I've had that happen myself, and recording EVP and then putting it onto a computer and then sound biting it and then trying to clear it up, and then you play it and it's really clear. But then the whole computer shuts down. And it's not because you're doing anything unusual. The computer is designed to handle a lot more than that, like a gaming laptop, for example, which in my case was what it was. And there should have been no issue in playing the EVP, but it seemed at the moment it was played, it shut down the whole thing. And then when bringing it back up again, it would play kind of irregularly. It wasn't dependable. And it initially was put on to the computer from one of those mini cassette recorders,
Okay.
from you get from Walmart essentially. But like I think that's just really interesting because what he described and what you're describing, what your friend described, having recorded that, but then hearing when the individual was calling out, like looking for the one named James, as if you said before that it seemed like it was being picked up by some type of, like, almost like when they do an intercom call over a hallway, for example, in a hospital or a facility. Once again, though, it appearing to be some sort of an observer effect going on where individuals, something, um, observing the experience of these sensory influenced individuals that may be hypersensitive to sensory around them, audible,
Yeah.
versus, seeing. So I think it does really feel like there's some kind of something to that. And I know it sounds bizarre because you're like, well, but we're just people who just happen to, have lower eyesight or none or whatever variable, but it may be of great interest to somebody else. They may be looking at something that we're not aware of because, so much is kept from us.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
said paging Dr. James, but yeah, essentially something like that where they're, looking for the one named James, and that it being more of like that. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yep. It's also the first time I went there, like that first night, I forgot about this too. The very first time I went there, and that first night, there was it was after I went to that computer room, and eventually I left that room. There was a tornado that came through the area, and we all actually had to go down into the basement and shelter, basically, from this tornado that was coming through the area. So uh, it's I don't know, and it's this big brick building, not multiple. Well, actually, I did have two floors on the dorm side of the building, uh, but yeah, and I mean the renovations. I really wonder, was there just as much activity there the first time I went as the
I don't know.
second? And
It just
it's just,
reminded me, and I don't want to
yeah.
forget, but the whole looking for the one named James
Hmm.
insinuates that they were looking at and you said this was kind of a small group, most often was like 10 to 15, maybe 20 people at the most.
Yeah. Yep.
So looking for the one named James is looking at the group as you see what I'm saying? Looking
Oh
for
yeah.
this one named this, like as if they're watching. all of them in this way. It's really
Yep.
interesting.
And that's what I wonder too. Was there just as much activity there when I went the first time as the second time, with just as many people having experiences? But I just didn't hear about it because, again, that was not the stigma hadn't been slightly decreased yet at that point, the way it had been by the time I went there the second time. In other words, was there just as much activity there when I was there the first time, or did it get picked up? Did it increase because of the renovations and restructuring that happened before I went there the second time? Because there were entire rooms that were just removed and then new rooms put in their place, and all that. So the physical structure of the building was changed, and the spaces and all that were changed. So
I don't know, they always
uh,
say that renovations do have an effect, and then I think if there was any kind of history to the building, and then, the response to the renovation, I mean, was there some sort of, I don't know, degradation to those areas, due to, I don't know, intentionally? Because I've heard accounts of like, you know, activity or presence of when people report having had entities in a house, you'll notice that they'll mention also too that a lot of weird things start happening with the house. Like I lived in such a house where suddenly, everything starts falling apart in the house. The water heater goes out. Maybe the main water line goes out. You know, um, Different things like that happening. And you kind of wonder if it's the effect of some sort of activity being there, if it's having some effect on the integrity of the property.
right,
But it could be too, like you were saying, or both, that other people complaining and wanting to move from that room to another room, that's just kind of, but then again,
yeah,
that would insinuate there's some sort of extra sensory activity going on that then the staff becomes aware of. And who knows what their experience was of how they saw it,
right.
or interpreted these things.
That reminds me of something that happened actually in this apartment that I forgot about. Um, and maybe it's paranormal, maybe it's not, but there was one point several years ago where my heater just would not work, and it just was not turning on, not I don't know, the thermostat wasn't working, like everything wasn't working with it. And they had the regular maintenance people come in and look at it, and they tried to fix it, couldn't fix it. Had an actual like expert, like a furnace cooling and heating kind of technician come and look at it, and like they could not figure out for a while why it wasn't working. And eventually they got it working, but they said they had no idea why it wasn't working to begin with. And it makes me wonder, and I've always wondered this about that, like, was there someone just trying to say hello or get a message to me that day, and like the only way they could do it for whatever reason was mess with the heater for that time being? Because I could just tell that, and the technician even said something like, it's almost like the place is haunted. Maybe the place is haunted because they can't figure out why. And I kind of laughed at the time because, yeah, the place kind of has had a lot of activity, but of course I wasn't going to tell the guy that. Poor guy trying to fix the heater, But so yeah, I mean, who knows how much effect that if these other consciousness can affect uh, electronics on any level or machines on any level, then why wouldn't they be able to affect the technology in a home that runs everything in the home too? So it could be.
I think so. You hear accounts of like entire houses going out, just electricity
Hmm.
going off without explanation,
Yes.
or blowing fuse boxes, things like that.
Yep. Yeah. So that's definitely a lot there that happened there, and I wish it wasn't a government facility so I could kind of um, research it more and like and maybe talk to more people that have worked there or maybe had experiences there. But again, it's kind of complicates things. But that's okay. At least I still have those experiences, and I remember I have other people that had them, and yeah, it's provided a lot of interesting thoughts uh, over the years. So But I think that's a good place to basically end it here. And we'll come back again another time for another topic-based episode.
All right, yeah, I made it to 10%. My laptop's at 10%. It made it that far. I'm gonna plug it in, and I appreciate you having me on. And
Yes, thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye.
I did as well. Thank you. Yep, take care. And yeah, thank you all for being here and listening in. And again, this will not be coming out right away, so anyone that missed it will have a chance to hear it, or missed parts of it will have a chance to hear it when it comes out. And of course, I'll be doing shows again soon, and we'll do another topic-based episode another time with Jen, as we tend to alternate between the ones where we talk about my experiences and the ones that we cover topics. We're going to, at some point soon, cover the whole phenomenon of paranormal activity at 3 a.m. or around there in the morning, basically. I haven't talked to Jen about this yet, but I'm sure we'll be able to do it. It won't be a problem. A show on cemeteries and graveyards and why those seem to have activity in them. So the good thing about these topics is I don't think we'll ever run out of topics to cover. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Please check out all the links in the episode descriptions for all the friends of the show. I guess it's a good time to sort of just mention here that I am on other shows here and there. Usually I co-host with over on Troubled Minds Radio. I kind of sit in for a lot of those shows. Also, I sit in with Ricky on Anything Is Possible on Sundays. Been doing that for a while now. And yeah, so you can hear me all over the place if you really want to. So thank you all for listening. Please, like I said, check out all the links to all the friends of the show and their own projects, and including, of course, the Troubled Minds Radio Network, because they've helped so much. And yeah, thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal once I find the button to shut this down. Thank you all, and take care.